happy to announce a tax revenue result of 1.250 trillion rand, which exceeds the February estimate by 38 billion rand. Stated otherwise, we have reduced the October revenue estimate of under-recovery from 312.8 billion, as expressed in the Minister's budget statement, to 175.2 billion. This means that SARS reports an additional 138 billion as a result of the slightly improved economy and a focus on compliance efforts for the year. Within the context of the economic contraction, the revenue reported year on year is down 7.8%, but represents an improvement of 3.1% against the revised February estimate and 12.3% improvement against the October MTBPS estimate set by the Minister. The significant contributors in this regard to the positive revenue performance reported against February estimate are as follows. Personal income taxes are up 4.2 billion or 488.6 billion collected, which is a 0.9% improvement from the February estimate. Corporate income taxes is up 11.7 billion, meaning a collection of 204.7 billion rand, or a 6.5% improvement against the February estimate that's set by the Minister some 6 weeks ago. Value-added tax is up by 6.1 billion, collecting 330.7 billion, or 1.9% up from the February estimate. Import duties are up by 2.2 billion rand to 47.4 billion rand, or 4.9% up from the February estimate. And domestic specific excise is up 7.4 billion, collecting 32.3 billion, or 30.7% up from the February estimate. The above positive performance is a result of some economic improvement as well as the focused collection efforts borne out by the rebuilding and the restoration of the capability and integrity of SARS. From an economic perspective, companies in the mining and financial services sectors performed better than expected, as well as the pent-up trade demand from the first half of the year were caught up in the second half of the year. This was offset by a higher than expected refunds across all taxes, the net loss of employment, lower wage increases and bonus payments. Industries that also contribute to excisable products had a net year-on-year decline in revenue across all taxes of 21 billion or 33% down, which includes 14 billion under recovery from the tobacco and alcohol products. A detailed view is included in our media briefing pack and will also be available on our website. Let me now turn to the performance that underlies this achievement, because in a way we are also accounting to you for the work that we do at SARS. And bear with me as I take you through some of the detail. When we think about the tax revenue management system at SARS, and we had previously reported that we distinguish between the revenue that we receive, voluntary from taxpayers, and the revenue that we have to collect through the administrative actions that we impose and that yields the additional revenue. We refer to this as our compliance program. This approach recognizes that revenue performance is dependent on three interrelated factors. Firstly, economic conditions and tax policy. This sets the revenue estimate. Secondly, the administrative effort by SARS or our compliance program. And thirdly, the overall compliance culture and tax morality of our society. In a perfect world, when these three factors work well together, we would achieve an optimal tax revenue outcome. Given that we have experienced a significant shock in the economy and are still struggling with low levels of tax compliance, the administrative actions by SARS is critical to achieve the best possible revenue outcome. I would like to touch briefly on the key administrative actions that underlie the revenue result that we announced today. Firstly, the administrative effort by SARS. It is too early to declare victory, and we are the first to admit that we still drop the ball far too often. We are encouraged, though, at the progress we experience as several pockets of efficiency emerge. In addition to our new organizational arrangements, there is a renewed focus on our compliance program, which directs us to specific aspects of non-compliance and criminal activities. I would like to share with you some of this progress and the impact it has had on the revenue outcome we report today. Firstly, improving general non-compliance. And this includes non-filing when you ought to file, non-registration when you ought to register, non-payment or underpayment or late payment. And the early successes I report today are as follows. In terms of new registrations, we have expanded the tax base significantly. We have added 1.6 million new registered taxpayers, mainly in pay-as-you-earn, VAT, and personal income taxes. This has yielded 5.8 billion in tax payments. We have paid out 1.47 billion in refunds to these taxpayers, or a net revenue from this additional taxpayers of 4.4 billion rand. And you'll find the breakdown in the pack that we will provide you. Then we focus on overdue payments and outstanding income tax or VAT or CIT or other returns. Here we have processed 1.626 million cases. We've made over 370 telephone calls and sent out 327,000. So that's 370,000 telephone calls and 327,000 text messages to non-compliant taxpayers. Maybe some of you received such an SMS, but I'm sure none of you who are in the room today will have received such an SMS. The outstanding debt that we have collected as a result of this effort amounts to 63 billion rand, of which 12 billion is from large businesses and the other taxpayers contributing to 51 billion. We have also finalized 1,222 applications to our voluntary disclosure program, and this has yielded 3 billion rand in cash collected, but encouragingly it has also prevented refund leakage of another 1 billion rand. We have invoked and finalized 16,800 under-declared provisional tax payments. So when companies who are provisional or individuals are provisional taxpayers, they have to make an estimate of their tax due. And if that estimate is too low, SARS in terms of paragraph 19.3 is then permitted to invoke an additional tax payment. We have done so for 16,800 taxpayers, resulting in an additional 16 billion rand, 11,500 of these large business taxpayers, and just over 5,200 of these from the small, medium business segment. Then from our specific audit and investigative work, we have raised a number of additional assessments arising from the following phenomena. And some of these I share with you as a concern. we have seen numerous instances of incorrect and unsubstantiated claims, which includes underdeclaration of income and overstatement of expenses, and also just underdeclaration in total. And some of these may involve fraudulent claims and fictitious invoices. Increasingly, we are also reconciling invoices on turnover and deposits in bank statements to VAT declarations and are detecting significant instances of mismatch between various declarations. So the turnover declared in a income tax declaration is different to the turnover declared in a VAT declaration, suggesting fictitious invoices, invoicing carousels, and even consequently fraudulent refund claims. Similarly, we saw companies declaring a certain level of turnover which is, as I said, mismatched between various returns. And therefore, the integrated view of a taxpayer's financials increasingly is important for us to ensure that the tax liabilities that are due are appropriately paid or collected. We've also detected and intervened in several instances of IRP 5 certificates. This is the employment, the certificate that employer gives to an employee that reflects the income that they've earned and the deductions through the payroll. And we have noticed a number of these are inappropriately or fraudulently issued by non-compliant employers, employers who are either not registered or who should not be deducting tax to individuals in respect of personal income tax deductions. Many companies continue to declare losses for extended periods. We are focusing increasingly on this and have established a specific project focusing on assessed losses, resulting in numerous income tax refunds that we have reversed. That's just under the area of general compliance improvement. Then we turn to some specific practices which we categorize under tax avoidance. And with our renewed focus, we have looked at a number of areas. Firstly, under the refund leakage protection, as we continue to extend the use of data, employing machine learning algorithms and artificial intelligence, and using technology as an enabling platform, we will not only improve our engagement with honest taxpayers to make it easy for them to comply, but we are also expanding our capability to present a credible threat of detection and to make it hard and costly for negligent taxpayers who either negligently or aggressively or even fraudulently and criminally seek to defraud the fiscus. As a result, we have detected and finalized 1.63 million instances of refund leakages and debt equalization, preventing an outflow of 57 billion rand. Of that, 44 billion would have been unlawful refunds, and about 13 billion of that would have been paying a refund to a taxpayer who owes us money. And so we hold on to that because of the debt equalization activity. Then in terms of our customs area and aspects of non-compliance, our response in this area to illicit trade have resulted in more than 4,500 seizures of illicit goods that includes counterfeit products, illicit cigarettes and alcohol, rhino horn, and even prohibited COVID-19 medicines such as ivermectin. Taking into consideration the impact of COVID-19, there was a reduction of trade over the first half of the year, and therefore the ongoing restrictions of traveller movement have impacted on the overall outcome. But even under these circumstances, the revenue protected through these efforts amounts to 2.5 billion rand, and in addition to this, customs have collected a further 2.6 billion from customs contraventions that include misclassification of goods, duty evasion, undervaluation of goods, and rules of origin infringements. So a rule of origin infringement is where a taxpayer takes advantage of an area that is allowed to have a duty exemption, imports a product from an area that is dutiable into a non-duty area, and then simply adds on a label made in this particular country, but actually the product is made in another country. And so rules of origin infringements is a huge risk to us. And now, especially with the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, that risk is an amplified risk for us. In terms of imported services, taxpayers are subject to paying VAT when goods and services are acquired from VAT vendors. We've commenced a project, and we started at home. Our initial project focuses on government departments who imports projects, and we look at their compliance with the VAT Act, and in particular with regard to the acquisition of electronic services from non-resident providers. To date, from this initial project, we have collected 111 million, and we will continue to engage with all affected stakeholders and expand this project to the entire tax base. Secondly, we have also registered 19 non-resident entities thus far and are continuing to engage with those who have been identified, particularly where VAT registration is concerned and a liability therefore exists, and working in regularizing their VAT affairs, and we expect additional tax revenue will flow from that activity. In addition, we have also improved our identification of non-resident e-service suppliers who have received payment from South African customers. You may also recall that we have recently invited taxpayers to disclose the acquisition and or trading of so-called crypto assets. And then our ongoing efforts on transfer pricing and international taxes continue to raise a concern of companies utilizing base erosion and profit-shifting practices. These are focus areas in the re-established large business and international segment and will be extended across the other segments. When we make an announcement shortly in terms of the Davis Tax Committee work, we will provide more insights of the work we will focus on in the coming year. Then under criminal and illicit activities, we are aware of ghost employers and employees. Over the years, we have seen a steady increase in the number of submissions from ghost employers who file returns without payments or who file returns without employees, in the hope of getting pay-as-you-earn refunds. In the tax year past, we saw 3,435 employers who have submitted more than 77,000 employee certificates, IRP5s, amounting to 2.5 billion refunds, which we have detected and are in various stages of investigation. In such cases, these individual taxpayers would submit their returns, where they are real individuals, claiming a refund because they naturally have contributed, but because the employer have not handed over, we then have a double whammy. We have an under payment from the employer, and then we pay out a refund to an individual who have legitimately fulfilled their obligation. And so increasingly, the focus on pay-as-you-earn compliance will be on our agenda. In terms of criminal and illicit enforcement actions, we are cooperating with a number of commissions of inquiry, Zondo and others, and also with law enforcement agencies as they investigate claims of state capture and other areas of corruption and integrity concerns. Compliance efforts so far includes illicit financial flows and illicit trade interventions. I can report the following. 780 preliminary investigations have been finalized. The focus areas include fuel, tobacco, alcohol, clothing and textiles,
good
leather,
grammar and
footwear, as well as VAT carousels. This is a fraudulent activity where goods are declared for export, thereby claiming the VAT, but actually do not leave the country at all, or leave the country simply to return with collusion of third parties. Areas where this manifests specifically, across the board, but specifically in the gold sector, in the phoenixism, where VAT companies are created for no other reason but for the express purpose to defraud the VAT system. There are examples of abusive liquidation practices and business rescue practices. Obviously, there are illicit financial flows which often manifest as the overstatement of the value when taxpayers apply to the Reserve Bank for advanced payments on capital goods or services that they import, inflate the value, and then when the customs declaration is filed, there is a differential between the actual value that flowed out and the value of the goods flowing in, and the difference effectively is an illicit financial flow. Then clearly we still are concerned about various instances of tax evasion and money laundering. In terms of state capture cases, we currently have 7 projects comprising of 85 civil and 58 criminal investigations. 7 civil and 32 criminal investigations have been finalized, and 27 of these are currently with the National Prosecuting Authority. We have been successful in securing 9 preservation orders with an estimated asset value of 5.5 billion rand. 5 search and seizures operations have been concluded. 2 tax inquiries have been completed into illicit financial flows and related focus areas, and 1,445 illicit trade interventions, 16 detentions, and 45 seizures have been conducted with a combined value of over 300 million rand. Interagency working group have been established on illicit trade, specifically in the gold sector, and we have 17 criminal investigations with SARS that by our estimate has a prejudice of 926 million rand, and 42 cases are currently with SAPS and the NPA, where we estimate the revenue prejudice to be 8.5 billion rand. Then this year, we introduced accelerated procurement of personal protective equipment, and sadly, we have let ourselves down as a society by the number of corrupt, fraudulent, and otherwise irregular procurement practices. In April 2020, when we commenced a project to identify non-compliant taxpayers who supply protective equipment, personal protective equipment to government, we have noticed a number of irregularities. The results of this work to date, which is still ongoing, is that we have collected in undeclared revenue 135 million rand. We've reduced refunds by 47 million rand. We have invoked paragraph 19.3 revenue of a further 23.5 million rand. We've obtained preservation orders of 88 million rand. 278 of these taxpayers who were not registered for VAT, and we have registered them, some as far back as 2017. 156 taxpayers were investigated for ITAC VAT exemptions that have been unduly claimed, and 30 politically exposed persons have been identified, and we are at various stages of investigating that. We've also seen encouraging success with criminal convictions, and we've had a number of notable prosecution successes resulting in lengthy jail sentences. We have seen most criminal cases relate to syndicated VAT fraud, and in the past year we have had a few significant convictions with jail time in excess of 10 years each. There's an increasing tendency for intermediaries, people who are supposed to be trusted advisors that intermediate between SARS and taxpayers. We have seen a tendency of bad and fraudulent practices by these intermediaries. Included in this are tax practitioners, business rescue practitioners and liquidators, and we have successfully found some of them guilty of colluding with taxpayers, and you have also read about successful prosecutions and jail sentences that have been handed out. Criminal investigations has also profiled a number of high net worth individuals who enjoy a luxurious lifestyle, demonstrate unexplained wealth when compared to the income that they disclose to SARS. And so we are focusing significantly on that area of abuse. And we have the ability to access a number of databases that can supply details of high-ticket items that have bought, such as luxury cars and expensive property. And we do capital reconciliation back to the income statement. Because as you know, very often these individuals, we find out more by their statements of assets and liabilities than their statement of income and expenses to truly understand their tax obligation. And we see significant discrepancies in this regard. In certain areas where the facts merit it, criminal prosecution is initiated. We've also observed during criminal investigation and other criminal behavior emerges from the evidence. So we may start with what we think is just a civil offense because of an underdeclaration of income, and that leads us to a criminal offense which we then prosecute. We have seen increase in syndicated activity involved in human trafficking or international money laundering. And clearly where this happens, we refer both internally and externally to other agencies to ensure a holistic response. Specifically in terms of litigation successes, I can report the following. We have seen an increase in taxpayers taking administrative points and general increase in litigation across all tax areas. On tax appeals involving the determination of a tax liability, we have seen a success rate of 92% of cases that are on appeal. On litigation involving the administration of tax, our success rate is 87%. And in customs and excise litigation, we have a little lower success rate and report 67%. We've also had successful outcomes in the Constitutional Court when it gets to aspects such as taxpayer confidentiality, because the confidentiality between taxpayers and SARS is sacrosanct to us doing our work, and we want to assure taxpayers that we honor this privileged information we have access to, and we will guard it with everything that the law allows us to do. In line with our previous focus on revenue recovery, therefore, if I take all of these examples I've shared with you, we can report to you that included in the 1.250 trillion rand that we announced today, there is a revenue component of 158.5 billion rand. This includes a year-on-year improvement of 26.8% on compliance cash collected, or 94.1 billion rand, as opposed to 74 last year, and a reduced revenue leakage through refund work that we do of a further 64 billion rand. Last year that number was 54 billion rand, and so an 18.8% improvement. So in total, the compliance efforts of SARS have resulted in an additional 158.5 billion rand in the year that we report. Let me give you a little bit of a sense of the year ahead before I conclude. Our compliance work will focus on a number of areas. The Davis Tax Committee work have been concluded. A report has been submitted to Minister Mboweni in December of 2020, and a number of these recommendations are in the process of being implemented including a renewed focus on high-wealth individuals. I am pleased to announce that Judge Dennis Davis, who has retired at the end of 2020, will be spending more of his time with SARS. We have employed him on a more full-time basis so that he can help us implement many of the recommendations arising from the report. In the past, we often end up with a report with recommendations that is never implemented. This time, we want to follow through and ensure that these recommendations are implemented so that indeed the tax gap can be closed and the uncollected revenue can end up where it belongs, which is in the coffers of government. We will be making further announcements in this regard soon. In criminal and illicit economic activities, sadly we cannot anywhere closely declare victory. The problem is inordinate in our society. And this continues to be a huge area of concern for SARS. We have initiated work that will gain further traction as we increase our capability and capacity. And in the new financial year, that will have a renewed focus. But it's also important that you understand that for us to win the war on illicit trade and related criminal activities, we require a whole of government approach. And therefore, we continue to collaborate with other organs of state to ensure greater success in combating illicit trade and related activities. We also have renewed our relationship with other revenue and customs authorities around the world because very often the fraud already commences offshore in collusion with importers, traders, or financial institutions or intermediaries that are offshore. On tax morality and compliance culture, which is important, we have seen in many aspects this reflects the state of compliance across the nation. So SARS is just a microcosm. If we have a law-abiding society, we will experience that more correlated in SARS. Where the South African public have lost confidence in the system of governance, they will also feel justified to withhold their taxes. And so this is hard work which we take seriously, and we will continue to build confidence between ourselves as the Revenue Authority and the South African public. In conclusion, therefore, it is an important moment and a checkpoint in the work we have begun to rebuild SARS and to improve the compliance relationship with companies and individuals. The integrity of SARS, the capability of SARS is central to this work. And we want to acknowledge not only the progress that we have made, but also taxpayers who have contributed to the work we do and to the revenue outcome we announce under very, very difficult circumstances. Actually, if we reflect on one of the most difficult years in recent times, we have produced one of the most favorable revenue outcomes under the current conditions. And we cannot do this without the tax-paying public, and we want to acknowledge them and thank them. Our combined efforts in achieving the result of 1.25 trillion rand are important for our country more than ever before in defining and transforming the lives of South Africans. The gogo in the village, as well as the young unmarried mother, who often have many mouths and extended families to feed, would be destitute were it not for the fact that your tax money is the difference between them starving or having a decent meal and a roof over their head. The many frontline workers who have courageously and continue to bravely fight to protect us during this pandemic, to whom we owe an unqualified debt of gratitude. They are employed, they are supplied with the equipment and the facilities because of your tax money. Little boys and girls can go to school in decent facilities because of you. The ambitious infrastructure-led growth program of government, as well as the thousands of jobs it will create, are made possible because of the contribution from compliant taxpayers. We can therefore assure you that your tax matters. Thank you. I would like to specifically thank His Excellency President Ramaphosa for entrusting us with this privileged work, our Minister of Finance, Minister Mbuweni, and our Deputy Minister of Finance, Dr. David Masondu, along with our colleagues in National Treasury under the leadership of my colleague, DG Dondo Mohojane, the community of intermediaries with whom we work, with whom and through whom we work, the millions of taxpayers who make this result possible, and I pause for a special moment to thank the more than 12,000 hard-working men and women at SARS, to whom I give an unreserved expression of my appreciation, and I know I extend your appreciation to them, who continue to step up and join in this important work. We have a long way to go, but I can assure you we have a committed team at SARS who lead this work. A huge thank you to every single taxpayer and trader whose efforts to comply, whose tax contributions, and whose patience with us when we occasionally drop the ball. Thank you for bearing with us. Thank you to the media community who report and also help us tell the story of SARS and the importance of the work. I now conclude by wishing you a wonderful day further. Retain your distance, lock down, stay well, hambagashli. It would be remiss of me not to thank our families and those who support us in this effort, and to many of you in the room, your significant others who help us and who free us to do the work we do, and our families who support us. Thank you very much. Remember, your tax matters.
Thank you, Commissioner. My name is Johnston Makubu, the Chief Revenue Officer. We will be moving over to question and answer sessions. There are some questions that have been given to us via the electronic channels, but there is going to also be an opportunity for us to take questions from the room. And I would perhaps ask that if you are in the room and you'd like to ask a question, that you introduce yourself by name and indicate which media institution you come from, and we will take your questions then accordingly. I will open the floor currently here in the room to pick up questions. Ma'am, you're on the floor.
Pranesh